Possible warrant at the address. Hello? And I heard him say, call the police, and I'm not hearing anything else. I got... Hello? Now I'm hearing music.
A hired killer broke into a nurse's home. 14 minutes later, he was dead, strangled by the woman he came to murder. Some killers make plans. Others make fatal assumptions. Tonight you'll hear about 4 criminals who thought they had everything under control. A serial killer whose own method gave him away. A spree shooter who picked the wrong target. A predator who set down his gun at the worst possible moment. And a hitman who underestimated a 260-pound emergency room nurse. Each mistake more devastating than the last. Before we continue, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments, and let me know what time it is where you are. I love seeing where these stories reach. Our first killer thought he was untouchable. He had a system, a signature, and it worked until it didn't. Paul Daruso was a former army soldier, dishonorably discharged in 1999 for possession of stolen goods. But his real crimes didn't begin in the military. Between 1997 and 2003, he targeted young women across multiple states. He would find a way into their homes, and once inside, he used the same method every single time. Strangulation, but not with his hands, with electrical cords, extension cords, coaxial cables, and he tied them in a very specific way. A peculiar slipknot that became his signature. It was careful, calculated, and for years it worked. But here's where Daruso made his fatal error. He never changed his method, not once. By 2003, he was working as a taxi driver for Gator City Taxi Company in Jacksonville, Florida. That's how he met several of his victims. He thought he was being smart. But investigators were starting to notice something. Crime scenes in different states, different cities, different years, but the same distinctive knot, the same type of cord, the same DNA. His signature wasn't protecting him, it was exposing him. June 17, 2003, Daruso was arrested after investigators finally connected the dots. 7 confirmed murders, 7 women who never saw it coming. One victim, Nakia Kilpatrick, was found in her home, but that's not the worst part. Her 2 sons, 11 months and 2 years old, were left alone with their mother's decomposing body. For up to 2 days, those children had no idea what had happened. They just knew their mother wouldn't wake up. December 2007, Daruso was sentenced to death. But in 2017, the Florida Supreme Court overturned his death sentence because the jury vote was split, 10-2. He's still on death row today, still alive, still breathing. The very thing he thought made him untraceable, his signature, became the evidence that tied every single crime directly to him. Daruso's mistake was arrogance. He stuck to what worked, never realizing that repetition doesn't hide you. It highlights you. Every knot, every cord, every victim became another piece of a pattern. And patterns are exactly what investigators look for. But at least Daruso lived to face trial. Our next killer? His mistake was far more immediate and far more fatal.
He was sentenced to death. He was also charged in the deaths of 4 other Jacksonville women, but was never tried. 10 years later, Daruso might get off death row. It was recently ruled in Florida that non-unanimous death penalty sentences after 2002 will have to be resentenced by a 12-member jury. Now, all 12 jurors will have to unanimously agree that the decision, or the case, I should say, deserves the death penalty. There is no timeline, and we have not heard word about when Daruso will be resentenced. Reporting live, Beth Russo, Fox 30.
James Dale Richie wasn't always a killer. In fact, he was once the kind of kid people thought had a bright future. East Anchorage High School, 1994. Richie was a standout athlete. State championship football team, state championship basketball team. He played alongside future professionals, guys who would go on to make millions. He scored 1,200 on his SAT. West Virginia University recruited him for their football team, but somewhere along the way, everything fell apart. By 2016, Richie was living on the streets of Anchorage. And between July 3rd and August 28th, he killed 5 people in just 6 weeks. Brianna Foisey, 20 years old. Jason Netter Sr., 41. Travion Kendall Thompson, 21. Bryde DeHusson, 25. Kevin Turner, 34. All of them shot at night. Parks, bike paths. Always around midnight. Always with the same weapon. A Colt Python .357 Magnum revolver. Here's the thing that made it even more twisted. Travion Thompson, his father Bobby Thompson, was Richie's childhood friend. Bobby had hosted Richie in his home for weeks at a time when they were teenagers, and Richie killed his son. With each kill, Richie got bolder. There was no clear motive. The victim seemed random. Police were hunting for connections, trying to figure out why these specific people. Then came November 12, 2016. Officers were responding to a call about an unpaid taxicab fare. Nothing major, just a routine complaint. Officer Arn Salau spotted Richie walking down the street. Salau approached him, simple request. "Stop, I need to talk to you." And that's when Richie made his choice. He could have run, he could have complied, he could have done a dozen different things. Instead, he opened fire. Officer Salau was hit at least 4 times. But here's where Richie's calculation completely failed. He brought a revolver to a gunfight with trained, equipped police officers. Sergeant Mark Patsky arrived as backup. Both officers returned fire. Richie went down, dead on the scene, age 40, 5 murders behind him, and one reckless decision that ended it all. November 12, 2016. Richie died in the street. But it wasn't until April 26, 2017, that investigators confirmed what they suspected. Ballistics tests matched the Colt Python found on Richie's body to all 5 murders. Officially, he was a serial killer. Officer Salau survived his injuries. The irony? Richie committed 5 calculated murders, chose his locations, chose his times, got away with it for months. Then one random encounter with police, and he decided to shoot his way out. That single moment of reckless escalation cost him everything. Richie gambled on a shootout and lost. But our next killer's mistake? Even more unbelievable. He literally handed his victim the murder weapon. Neil Martin Falls was born September 24, 1969. For years, he worked as a security guard at Hoover Dam. From around 2000 to 2008, he had a steady job. Then he was fired. Sexual harassment. July 18, 2015. Charleston, West Virginia. Falls responded to an ad posted by an escort named Heather Saul. But he didn't come to her residence for what she thought. They found something that told the real story. Multiple axes, a shovel, bleach, a bulletproof vest, handcuffs, knives, a machete, a sledgehammer, and a Rubbermaid tub, large enough to hold a body. This wasn't his first time. Investigators believe Falls was connected to at least 10 murders, possibly more. 3 sex workers found dismembered in Nevada, California, and Illinois between 2003 and 2007. 6 women who went missing in Chillicothe, Ohio, just 2 hours from Charleston. The disappearances stopped after Falls died. Falls arrived at Saul's place, and the moment he walked in, everything escalated. He pulled out a gun, pressed it against her abdomen. His words were clear: "You can live, or you can die." Then he started strangling her, his hands around her throat. Saul wasn't going down without a fight. She grabbed a rake, anything she could use to defend herself. They struggled, a violent, desperate fight for survival, Falls trying to overpower her, Saul fighting for her life. And this is where Falls made the decision that killed him. He set down his gun. He thought he could wrestle the rake away from Saul with both hands. He assumed he didn't need the weapon anymore. He assumed he was stronger. He assumed he had control. He was wrong. The second that gun left his hand, Saul saw her chance. She grabbed the firearm. One shot, to the head. Neil Martin Falls, age 45, dead. The gun he brought to kill her became the instrument of his own death. After Falls died, investigators started digging. What they found was chilling. 3 dismembered sex workers across 3 states, 6 missing women in Ohio. And after Falls was killed, the disappearances stopped. Just stopped. He took his secrets to the grave. There's no way to know how many victims there really were. No confessions, no trial, just evidence pointing to a predator who had been hunting for years. The irony? One moment of overconfidence, one assumption that he didn't need his weapon, and it ended what could have been a multi-state killing spree. Falls underestimated his victim's will to survive, but nothing compares to the embarrassment of our final killer, a paid professional, strangled to death by the woman he was hired to murder. September 6th, 2006, Portland, Oregon. Susan Kunhausen was 51 years old, an emergency room nurse at Providence Portland Medical Center. She spent her days restraining violent patients, dealing with trauma, saving lives. Her estranged husband, Mike Kunhausen, was a dentist. He was also the manager at Fantasy Adult Video Store, and he wanted her dead. So he hired Edward Dalton Haffey, 59 years old, a custodian at the same video store. Mike paid him thousands of dollars to kill his wife. Now, Haffey wasn't new to this. Back in 1991, he had arranged the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Georgia Lee Dutton. He served 9 years for conspiracy to commit aggravated murder. So when Mike came to him with this job, Haffey knew exactly what he was doing. The plan was simple. Wait for Susan to come home from her shift. Strangle her. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. 6 p.m. Susan Kunhausen walked through her front door after a long shift at the hospital. Haffey was waiting inside. He had a claw hammer, and he attacked immediately. But here's what Haffey didn't account for. The size matchup. He was 5'9", 180 pounds. Susan was 5'7", 260 pounds. Years of working in an emergency room, physically restraining people who didn't want to be restrained. And there's one more thing. Haffey had a nearly lethal dose of cocaine in his system. He thought it would help. It didn't. Haffey's assumption was simple. A 51-year-old woman would be an easy target. He thought this would be quick. It wasn't. For 14 minutes they fought, hand-to-hand combat. Brutal, desperate. Haffey swinging the hammer, Susan fighting for her life. And then the reversal happened. Susan got him on the ground. She pinned him down, and using her own hands, she strangled Edward Dalton Haffey to death. The hitman, the man with a murder conviction, the man who was paid to kill her, dead in the home he broke into. Susan called 911. She survived. The investigation didn't take long. Detectives uncovered the murder-for-hire plot. Mike Kunhausen pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. June 2014. Mike died of cancer behind bars, 3 months before his scheduled release. Edward Haffey, his legacy is this: a hired killer with experience, with a conviction, with a plan, taken down by a nurse who refused to be a victim. The ultimate irony. He underestimated the wrong woman, and it cost him everything. 4 killers. 4 fatal assumptions. Paul Daruso assumed his signature would protect him. It exposed him. James Dale Richie assumed he could shoot his way past police. He died in the street. Neil Martin Falls assumed he didn't need his gun. His victim used it to kill him. Edward Dalton Haffey assumed a 51-year-old nurse would be easy prey. She strangled him to death with her bare hands. Each one underestimated their victims, and each one paid the ultimate price. If you found this breakdown compelling, leave a comment. Which mistake was the most fatal? Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next case. Because sometimes the hunted become the hunters, and sometimes the killers become the killed.